This video is sponsored by Factor. I love Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals that make eating better easy. Save time, money, and pick your favorite meals that are ready in 2 minutes. They get shipped to your front door and always taste delicious. There are so many options, and I've got a subscription of my own, and while the chef's choice is my favorite, the vegetarian and high-protein options are also delicious. I get to customize and choose whatever I want, and it makes things so easy when I've got a really busy work week just to go in, make some food, and it tastes really good, and I can get back to what I'm doing. Jalapeno cheddar chicken and the garlic rosemary pork chop meals are my favorite. Factor also covers so many bases, like breakfast. Their breakfast is so good, y'all. Or keto alternatives. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code FIREBALL50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next box. That's FIREBALL50 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next box while your subscription is active. So you want to play Fallout, huh? Load up a character with a half-broken 10mm pistol, 5 bottle caps, 2 dirty waters, a stick of dynamite, and the insatiable urge to find whoever shot you in the head.
What in the goddamn?
Or your dad, or your kid, or a water chip, or to save the world. Gek. It's a Gek in Fallout 2. Maybe you just finished the new TV show and you've got like a bajillion ideas in your head for a potential campaign. You sicko. I know you've got at least 3 Vault experiments in there. Ugh. Who'd ever want to play that? Pfft, definitely not me. Man, I always wish I could play a ghoul. Oh! Man, I always wish I could play a Protectron. Oh! Man, I always wish I could play a classless TTRPG system that uses action points, has a variety of weapons, and lets me build my character however I want without having to align to a build, and instead I can make interesting choices that align to the type of story I want to make for my character. Oh! I spent the past 3 years keeping the floors waxed. I've spent the past 3 years making this homebrew TTRPG Fallout system, and now I'm here to show it to the world. Here's how to play my Fallout system. Jeez, gosh. Okay, this is where all the editing stops getting funny. This video's too long. I really wanted to play a Fallout RPG, but there wasn't really one that I liked. So I started thinking of some ways that I could homebrew my own. And I spent a few months writing the basics to a system that would utilize some of our D&D homebrew rules. And then we streamed 40 episodes of it over the course of 2 years. And it was a lot of fun, and I got to make a lot of changes, and it was great. All of which is thanks to the permission I got years ago from Bethesda to even make all of this. That's basically it. You can move on from here. I've time-stamped the whole video. There's chapters. Go check out the rest of it, because the section I'm going to do right now is me being really petty and addressing a bunch of comments I know I'm going to get when I upload this video. Jacob, you know Modifius has a Fallout system, right? Yes. Jacob, you know Exodus exists, right? Yeah. Savage Worlds, this exists. Yeah, I've played it actually. What about Fantasy Flight? Yeah, Me and my group have been playing Fallout the RPG Loud for years. Okay. Jacob, you know Josh Sawyer made his own RPG system back in like 2005? Jacob, have you played GURPS? I have nothing against these systems. I researched them immensely when I was writing this system, and I just didn't really like them. They just weren't what I wanted to run. I initially started this system as a homebrew thing for me and my friends to play and stream on our channel, and then everyone who watched wanted to play it, and now here I am years later kind of finishing it. Okay, to give a brief description of what this system is, and to also give fuel to all of the cynics who are going to sum up all of this into a 1-sentence snippy comment, I made a free Fallout TTRPG system that primarily uses a D20 that has a focus on customizing your character build to make whatever you want. The system is meant to feel explosive, a little silly, but rewarding. It's grounded with some survival rules, a crafting system inspired by the video games. Combat uses action points similar to the original games. There's no classes, and instead, when you level up, you pick perks that customize your character, give you cool abilities, and they're also all inspired from the video games and TV show a little bit. And a lot of the rules in the game that aren't just inspired from the video games are just rules that I think would be fun. But yeah, I guess as its backbone, it does use 5e D&D, but I used it more as a base to form the game's rules because 5e is super modular. I do not want people to think that this is a 5e D&D Fallout conversion. It's not what it is. It's very different. It uses the way that 5e is structured as kind of its structure, except I've taken it all apart and done something new with it. For example, like there's advantage and disadvantage, or creatures might have resistance or vulnerability. Mostly just because I think those are fun rulings. All right, enough yapping. Let's jump into it. When I was writing this system and researching others, I didn't want to be beholden to a set of rules, a theme, or one idea. This whole system is held together with 5 screws, some duct tape, and maybe a desk fan. I wrote the whole thing myself, except for the descriptions under each race. Those I paraphrased and summarized into pieces of from the Fallout fandom wiki. I've quoted them so that you know where they're from, and I have a link to it where you can read more about it. Also, the movement, environment, and combat sections, I have copied the formatting of the 5e SRD, things like chapters and titles, and the way that it's structured, but completely rewritten it, rephrased it, and changed it because it's not 5e D&D. But the structure and the formatting is similar. I also had a lot of help from my friends who play tested this system, and of course our audience who have really helped play test and shape this system and also balance it into what it is now. So starting off with the general idea of what this thing is, it's basically everything that I love in a TTRPG, but it's Fallout. I love the way action points work in the original game. You basically have a set of points that are modified by your agility score that determine how much you can do in a turn. It's similar to Divinity or like Pathfinder 2e, where you have like 3 actions instead of dedicated actions. So in my Fallout system, you get 10 action points, more or less, depending on your agility, and everything you can do in combat has an action point cost. Typically 3, 4, 5, or 6, like Fallout 1 and 2. Moving 5 feet is 1 action point, swinging a knife is 3, shooting a rifle might be 5, reloading your gun is 6, standing up from prone is 5, going into cover is 3, and so on. Unlike Pathfinder 2e, there's no negatives for shooting as much as you want on your turn. If you don't want to move on your turn and you've got a +5 agility, which means you have 15 action points, and you've got a gun that can shoot with 3 AP, you could shoot that gun 5 times on that turn. This is the core identity of my Fallout system. Doing whatever you want and having fun doing it. I'm gonna make my agility a 10, upgrade my gun, get a perk that lets me do more damage, and blast that dude with a ton of damage. I want my players to feel like they're pulling off something crazy when they play my games. I love it when they put their mind to something, pull it off, and it turns out so cool. Spencer wanted to play a robot cowboy, and Huck was blasting fools with a revolver, but he was so charismatic that whenever he would become mortally wounded, the entire party would rally to protect him. He had a perk where if he ever took damage to his hit points, everybody else would get a bunch of stamina points, which are basically hit points. So that feeling of everybody being rallied, getting stronger, and watching their friend go down in combat was like statistically represented in game. Marshall played a doctor sniper combo who looked like Walter White. One turn he was pulling bullets out of your arm, and the next turn he was sniping the head off a super mutant. Craig played a Protectron who eventually looked like this, and Craig's entire idea with this build was to not attack anyone and to make everybody else do it. Craig specifically made Cerebella so she could utilize a perk called Commander, where you can spend 3 AP on your turn to give somebody else 6 AP on their turn, and then had other perks to buff them when they attacked or took actions. She also came up with protocols for specific actions and combo moves for the other characters. Like for Marshall's character, Alabaster, it was Reaper Protocol because he had Grim Reaper Sprint. For Paige, it was Dimes Protocol. For Swiss, it was Hooks. It was so cool. Tyler played an ex-Brotherhood of Steel field scribe who was just fully invested into intelligence and perception so hard that her other stats took a hit. She had like no hit points but could craft like crazy and make modifications to weapons and ended up with like a super powerful gauze pistol and a plasma cutter that she turned into like a plasma glaive. It was so cool. Jack only played for a few games, but I was really surprised that he was able to jump in so easily and make his character Cross, who's an NCR Ranger cowboy who sniped Brotherhood of Steel while hanging out of a vertibird. It was great. Mia's character, Swiss, gives me nightmares. That vertibird then like begins its maneuver downward, chasing after you. And as you're like descending, it is managing to also just and continue downward, catching up close enough to be next to you. 20 feet across, but you guys are neck and neck right next to each other.
So we're 20 feet away?
Yeah.
And there's a door open.
Joshua Graham looking from down below. Whoa, and then
how much is it to grapple again?
Grappling.
Yeah, because I have to grapple first. If I...
3.
So that's just enough.
Oh, I know what you're fucking doing! Oh my god! Oh my god!
It's been giving me ones all day. Me as well.
Are you trying to like grapple and throw? Is that what you're trying to do?
I'm gonna grapple him right now.
It's part of the chair, right?
I kind of figured.
Ripping it out and throwing it.
17 plus 5 is 22.
Yeah, yeah. So she's like, where's the eject button? And it's nowhere. And Cerebella's like, just take him out. And you're just like, and you just rip it out with all these like tubings and stuff, and the pilot's like, ah!
He's in the sea, right?
Yeah.
Yes, he's in the sea.
Actually,
He's strapped into the sea.
He's like, I'm trying to make sure my division in my head is
Like a baby.
yeah. Yeah, you picked his car seat up and threw him out of a plane.
You take him and then you huck him out of the vertibird. He goes upside down, downwards, and then as it like flips over once or twice, getting over towards like the edge of the canyon, you're like, oh, he's just gonna land 50 feet and hit the ground. He hits the edge on the corner, splices it, and then slides down further.
He's
but-
dead instantly. He's fine.
Yeah. It probably didn't feel anything. He's with his God.
And then you're keeping up with the vertibird, and now it's like. This ghoul menace to society named Swiss was fully focused into strength, unarmed, and melee weapons. If Swiss was within 5 feet of you, you were probably already dead. She cut the arm off a behemoth. She punched people's heads off multiple times. Colton made Billy Lettuce, famed golf extraordinaire from a vault. He was entirely based in luck. He had no skill. Only luck. Billy was cracked out on chems in a dream. He was either failing horribly or succeeding in the most insane ways. Now, all of that makes this sound like this system makes the players really powerful. Is that true? Kind of. It's not that everybody is really powerful, it's that if they focus on a certain aspect of their character, they will get to do that really well. For example, Paige could craft anything, but had no hit points. Sarabella was pretty much useless if she was isolated from the party. Swiss didn't have any range. Billy only had luck, and Alabaster and Huck were so spec'd into range that they had a difficult time dealing with melee combatants. There was also Ace. I'm not gonna tell you about Ace. You should go watch our Fallout 0 campaign and learn about Ace. For example, there was a point in time in our campaign where everybody exploded. We should have TPK'd. But instead we kept playing, and instead everybody went through like a really dramatic change. People lost limbs, eyes, personalities shifted, Swiss nearly went feral, and it really grounded the game back into the survival elements that are very present within the system. You guys know me, I'm XP to level enjoys variant encumbrance. It's the apocalypse, people want to kill you for your shoes. There's big scary creatures, bullets are hard to come by, and sometimes you gotta drink poo-poo water to survive. Marshall's character did actually drink piss one time. Not his piss, somebody else's piss. I had to describe that. They also had a gun that was meant to shoot water out of it, but they didn't want to waste water. So they came up with the idea to pee into it, and it was called the Hydrocaster, and they called it the Piss Caster. I'm so proud of them. So with all of that in mind, with the possibility of what you can do and make in this system, what is actually in the system, Jacob? Why don't you explain it? Break it down, Jacob. So we're going to run through some of the major aspects of the game, but there is a lot here and I cannot go through all of it, so I'm just going to go through some of the basics. At the very beginning of the PDF, there is a character creation checklist, so if you're ever like, I don't know how to do that, it's right there. There's a whole list. And if you ever need questions or you want help, go join the Arcane Arcade Discord and you can always ask in the Fallout 0 chat. They're very helpful, and sometimes I'm there too. The one special rule that you need to know that is kind of the cornerstone of this entire system is the Karma Cap. Every player has a two-sided cap that they may flip at any time to gain advantage on a d20 roll. Alternatively, they may flip their Karma Cap after they roll a d20 to re-roll it and take the new result. However, the GM may also flip any player's flipped Karma Cap to gain advantage or a re-roll on a d20 roll. If a player with a flipped cap ever rolls a 1 on a d20 roll, they can flip one of their flipped Karma Caps but cannot use that cap to re-roll the 1. If the GM ever rolls a critical hit against a player with a flipped cap, they can flip their cap back over. And if your luck ability score is equal to 10, you get an extra cap. That's important because there's a lot of abilities in the game that let you use this Karma Cap in different fun ways. Starting off, we got races. The playable races include human and ghoul and super mutant and Gen 2 synth and robot, each of which have their own traits and variants. Human being default, you don't really get anything special. The entire system is kind of built around you playing human, but you can also pick variant human, which gives you an extra Karma Cap, but you're not very good at resisting radiation or addiction. There's also the variant human that is a Gen 3 synth. Doesn't give you anything special, you're just a regular human. Are you? I don't know. Maybe roll and find out if you are one. Ghouls! Ghouls are, of course, immune to radiation and have a bunch of perks that let them do cool stuff with radiation. Food and drinks and chems don't work so well on them, but neither do syringes. So if you get shot with like a poison, then it's not really gonna do much to you. Stimpaks don't heal you as good as they do humans and super mutants, but you know, there's perks. You can figure it out. The variant ghoul gives you a +2 in all your skills, an extra perk that you can pick, another ghoul perk that you get, immunity to poison, but you do go feral at level 15. Yeah. Gen 2 synths are all the parts minus a few red blood cells. You're immune to radiation and poison. You gain no effects from chems or foods or drinks, and you don't need to eat or sleep or breathe because you're basically just a humanoid robot. Well, that just sounds like better human. Yeah, that's kind of the point. It is much easier to go throughout the wasteland without requiring all of that stuff, but some of them can give you pretty good benefits. Variant Gen 2 synth has a more of a brittle body. You're vulnerable to electricity damage. If you get hit by a targeted attack, like you get shot in your arm and it like hurts your arm, you have to pick 2 conditions instead of 1 because, ooh, no, ow. But you get an extra skill point at every level up so you can have more skills, and you're also considered a robot for perk requirements. There's some good robot perks. Speaking of robots, there's 3 different playable types of robots: Protectrons, Handies, and Robo-Brains. Handies require fuel every week, or if you find a fusion core, you can slot that in and that'll give you a month. They can float, and they have different types of arms that you get to pick when you play one. Things that are like hands, they're called grippers, or a buzzsaw, or a drill, or clippers. Protectrons are a little slow, but they have thick plating, which gives you a +1 to DT. DT is damage threshold. Basically, whenever you take damage to your hit points, you subtract it by your DT. Armor in the game can give you DT, but Protectrons just have a natural +1. And they also get a specific tool like a laser, taser, or defibrillator. Robo-Brains aren't too complicated. They operate like every other creature in the wasteland, except, you know, they're a robot. They have vulnerability to electricity damage, and they also have all-terrain rollers, which give them immunity to difficult terrain. Super mutants! Originally, they were not in the system because I could not find a good way to balance them without it being dumb. But I've come up with a compromise thanks to our audience, and especially thanks to 2 gnomes in a trench coat who wrote a whole dissertation about why they should be in the system. As a super mutant, you're really big and you're immune to radiation, and your strength score increases by 1 and can't be lower than a 6. However, you need double the amount of food and water per day, and your items decay a little easier. The variants include defective strain, which increase your strength and endurance by 2, but your int is dropped. This is if you wanted to play like one of the big dumb ones. Or a Nightkin, where you can turn invisible and suffer severe psychological damage. Big author's note. Obviously, let your players play whatever you want, but if you're new to Fallout and you want to run this or you want to play this, I highly recommend sticking to human. Or at the very least, 2 of your players in your group play a human. The system, the world, and the video games are kind of fundamentally designed around the player being a human. And while I think you should be able to play whatever you want, obviously, the system is sort of the same. Not that it's unplayable if you don't play a human. It can feel bad if you have 4 players and one of them is a human, because the human is going to have to deal with water, food, potential addiction to chems, and radiation. And personally, I feel like that player might feel like they're dragging down the rest of the party. In our game, we had at least 2 humans. There was a point where we had 3, so it always kind of felt good. And the robots and the ghoul were always like, hey, yeah, we're immune to radiation. So in my opinion, I feel like if you're new to this or you're new to Fallout just in general, stick to human. Also, if you're a GM who's kind of newer to this and you want to have an easier time running the game, maybe lock all of your players into playing a human, something that you can discuss before you start playing. Or have everybody play a robot. That would be crazy. Backgrounds help you define what kind of person you are or were in the wasteland, what you did before you went out and started adventuring. Each background gives you 3 skills that you get a +2 into, an optional trait, and starting equipment, all of which is optional. You can pick custom background and do whatever you want. But each background is associated with a trait. What are traits? They're kind of like perks, but they have downsides. They're like fun modifications that you can make to your character and the game. You can pick 1 or 2 or none at all. The one associated with each background is just a recommendation. For example, the Vault Dweller trait is called Talented. You've learned many valuable tricks, but you haven't honed your skills as much. So you gain an extra perk at first level, but 5 different skills decrease by 2. Or this trait called One-Handed, where you get a +2 with any one-handed weapons, but a -2 with two-handed weapons. Or Jinxed, which is one of my favorite traits from the original Fallout games, which increases the critical failure chance by 1. So, you know, you roll a d20 and you roll a 1, that's a critical failure. If you take Jinxed, it's now a 2. But not just for you, for everybody. even the GM. You just turn up the critical failures from 5% to 10%. Multiple people could also take this, and I think it's really stupid that you could have this be like at 5 or 6. Like you roll a 5 and critically fail. That's so dumb. Let's move on to abilities and skills. Let's find out what makes you special. In Fallout, we have 7 ability scores: strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck. These scores are on a scale from 1 to 10, where an average is 5. Your modifier in the ability is its difference from 5. So if you have a 7, you have a +2. If you have a 4, you have a -1. At level 1, all your abilities start at 5, and you get 3 points to modify them. You can also choose to reduce any of your ability scores to increase other ones. So you could increase your strength by 2, your intelligence by 1, then take 2 points away from perception, 2 points away from endurance, and put 4 into luck. Each of these abilities is linked to a skill and lots of other things in the game. There are 14 skills: barter, breach, crafting, energy weapons, explosives, guns, intimidation, medicine, melee weapons, science, sneak, speech, survival, and unarmed. Strength increases your carry load. Carry load is basically how much you can carry, but I've always thought it was monotonous and dumb to measure the individual pounds of every single item. So instead, all of the items in Fallout are measured in load. Load is a mixture of its weight and the space that it takes up. So having a good strength allows you to carry more, but also putting on a backpack, which gives you more space to carry things, also increases your carry load. And we also don't have to be weird about things being half a pound. It's 1. Takes up this much space. Strength also modifies your intimidation skill. You can optionally make it strength, or you can make it charisma. Melee weapons and unarmed also use strength. Yes, they're skills, and it's also the bonus to hit whenever you hit with a melee weapon or unarmed strike. Also, every weapon has a strength requirement. If you don't meet the strength requirement, you have disadvantage on attacking. Perception modifies your breach skill, which is your ability to open locks, disarm traps, or hack computers. It can also optionally be modified by your intelligence. Perception also modifies your energy weapons, which is not only your knowledge of them, but also your attack roll bonus with them. Explosives, so whenever you throw an explosive like a grenade, the explosives check determines when it explodes, like at the end of your turn or on the next turn, because this system has no saving throws. I did it! You told me I couldn't, but I took them out! There's no saving throws! Medicine, which is how well you can heal or stabilize someone, and your combat sequence. This is basically initiative. When you roll combat sequence, it's not about how fast you are, it's about forethought. It's about if you knew if a fight was about to break out. Also, all ranged weapons have a range. Whoa, what is this? What is this, a calculation? What do I do with this? Every weapon's range is modified by your perception score. So if your perception score is higher, then you can shoot farther. Endurance, this ability modifies your hit points and also your healing rate, which is how fast you can heal. If you ever use a stim pack, you heal a number of hit points equal to your healing rate. Your endurance also modifies your death saves. You can have it be endurance or luck. And in this system, when you hit 0 hit points, you go into the dying condition, which means you're not just unconscious, you still get a turn. You just get 4 AP at the start of each of your turns, and you can like save them up to try to do something big on like your second turn if you're succeeding your death saves. If you're a human, you can resist radiation with endurance. Endurance also modifies the survival skill, which is your adaptation to the elements, knowledge of the land, your ability to hunt, and your expertise in cuisine. It's the cooking skill. Charisma, your force of personality, modifies your barter skill, which determines how good you can make a deal, but also there's a special ability where you can get a discount on items. Charisma also modifies speech, which is your ability to persuade, dissuade, converse, or just generally communicate with other people. And also intimidation if you don't want to use strength. Charisma also modifies a passive statistic in my Fallout system called Party Nerve. Party Nerve is the manifestation of your infectious charisma and strong leadership, allowing your fellow party members to push past their limits and survive. Each player character's Party Nerve score is equal to every player character's charisma score added together, then halved. And you get to add your party nerve bonus to your death saves. And also whenever you roll combat sequence, you get temporary stamina points equal to your party nerve. In our game, our party nerve was only like 1 or 2. So it's not really gonna be that big of a thing. But I can just imagine a party right now of like 6 people who all put a +5 into charisma, and that it's like a +15 to death saves. Intelligence can modify your breach or medicine skills if you don't want to use perception, and your crafting skill, which is how well you can repair items and craft them. Your science skill, which measures all of your deductive reasoning and knowledge on particular studies. Intelligence also modifies the amount of skill points that you get every time you level up. So if your intelligence is good, then you get more skills. Agility modifies your gun skill, which is your modifier to any roll with a gun, but also your general knowledge of them. your sneak skill, which allows you to stay hidden or inconspicuous, along with your action points, which allow you to perform actions in combat. You have a number of action points equal to 10 plus your agility modifier, and yes, that can be negative. Agility also measures your stamina points. I really liked the stamina point system in Starfinder, so I kind of did my own version, my own take of them in this system. Stamina points represent a combination of fatigue, stress, and reflexes. At first level, you have 10 stamina points plus your agility modifier. Same goes for your hit points. You have 10 plus your endurance modifier. Whenever you take damage from a source that you're aware of, it subtracts from your stamina points before it subtracts from your hit points. Think of it like you have 2 health bars. If your stamina points reach 0, then any damage that you take afterwards is dealt to your hit points. Now the thing is that stamina points are much easier to recover than your hit points. This is the wasteland. Taking a bullet is hard to heal. So whenever you rest, if you rest for like an hour, you recover up to half your maximum stamina points. And then if you rest for 6 hours, you get all of your stamina points back. But when you rest for 6 hours, your hit points only heal by their healing rate. You can also regain stamina by eating food, and there's lots of other abilities that can heal your stamina points. The way I always like to describe it to my players is that this is basically like your AC that can be drained. You do have an armor class in Fallout, but it's not modified by anything except for your armor. As a whole, in my Fallout system, ACs are really low. Most creatures are going to have an AC of 10 or 11. Having a 15 AC in this system is like having a 22 in D&D. So as a whole, you're hitting a lot more often in this system, but unless your target was unaware of the attack, they're gonna try to dodge, and that's represented by stamina points. Luck! My favorite ability! Luck modifies everything. All of your skills get a bonus to your luck modifier, halved, rounded down. But having a bad luck is also not super great, because if your luck modifier is negative, then all of your skills get a -1. Your death saves can alternatively be modified by your luck score instead of your endurance. Your critical hit chance is also modified by your luck, and so is a bunch of other things behind the screen, like encounters, random loot, and lots of other things. What I really love and I'm proud of with this game is that you can do something insane, like guess a password or shoot blindly, and the GM can call for a luck roll just to see if it happens. And with this system, you can be good at those rolls. The last thing all of your abilities modify are perks. Whenever you level up, you get a perk, except for 5th, 9th, 13th, 17th, and 19th level. Perks are the backbone of this system. They grant you bonuses, abilities, and neat, cool stuff that you can do. Every perk has a prerequisite, and most of them are associated with your score in that ability. So there's strength 4 perks, strength 5 perks, and so on. There's also race perks, and some perks are limited by level. But there aren't a lot of perks that are limited by your level, and that's on purpose. I really love the idea that you could go crazy, max out your strength, and take the strength 10 perk at level 1, but you would suffer in some other ability. There's over 170 perks, so I will just go through a few of them. Hauler lets you carry more. Heave Ho lets you throw things double the distance. Careful Aim lets you use additional action points to increase your attack roll. Here and Now lets you and every other character level up. You can only take it once. With Rooted, you can spend 4 AP to get a +5 to your DT, but you move slower, but your melee attacks deal more damage. Standoff gives you a bonus to your combat sequence. Pulsion Perforation lets you shoot through enemies, and Medicinal Master lets you use certain medical equipment to heal your party members way more hit points when you rest. Survivorship Bias lets you learn about other creatures that you've fought before. Pure Determination lets you flip your karma cap when you hit 0 hit points to heal hit points. And Phoenix Implant lets you regenerate hit points. Flaunt and Taunt lets you taunt enemies to attacking you. Synergizing Teamwork lets you flip your karma cap when another player fails a check or a attack roll, and it potentially turns it into a success. And Commander lets you spend 3 AP on your turn to give another player 6 AP. Adroit Alchemist lets you craft chems easier. Math Wrath lets you ricochet bullets off of walls to hit creatures that are behind cover. And Overcharge lets you charge your weapons with more AP to deal more damage. Quick Draw lets you equip or stow items with less AP. The Dance lets you add your agility modifier to melee weapon attacks and damage instead of strength. Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. If you attack an unconscious creature, they die. Ranger's Deadly Aim makes your first attack roll a crit if you're the first to act in combat sequence, or instead of a crit, you can instead target 3 creatures with 1 attack. Bloody Mess increases your damage, and you can roll a luck check when you kill a creature and they might explode and frighten creatures. Make It Double gives you a karma cap. Luck 10, variant human with this perk, it's like 4 karma caps. This was my karma cap build. Hey Jacob, I'm gonna play Fallout. This is my karma cap build. You can actually do that. You can actually make like a karma cap build. That would be crazy. You just have like 6 caps. It just works, lets you potentially ignore levels of decay. Grim Reaper Sprint gives you additional AP whenever you bring another creature to 0 hit points. And Dumb Luck lets you add your full luck modifier to all your skills. So we've got a lot of items, especially weapons. I wanted to make a large variety of weapons so that you could pick one and it can feel like a part of your character, especially because you can modify your weapons and your armor to customize them to your character build. We are not on the level of the video games, especially Fallout 4, when it comes to weapon customization. That would get insanely complicated, but I feel like there's enough here that you can do some fun stuff. I decided pretty early on not to have specific makes of armor, and instead general types that players can pick and then decide what they look like aesthetically. Then if you wanted to award something like some really cool, unique special armor, you can pick leather armor and then maybe choose a couple of upgrades to modify it. Plus, you don't add your agility modifier to your AC. AC is intentionally very low within this system, mostly because of stamina points, and also because I think constantly missing on your turn is really stupid. There's power armor. It's got it's there. It's a lot. There's a lot of stuff. GMs do not give this out willy-nilly. It is so powerful. Every weapon has an AP cost it takes to attack, the weapon's damage, a critical hit section. Almost all of the crits are different. Its load and strength requirement, and special properties. Pretty much every weapon has keywords that give it special abilities. Like a knife can be thrown. A sword is defensive, meaning you can block to get more DT. And a buzzsaw has weighted, which means if you ever roll a 1 on the damage dice, it's instead a 2. A lot of heavier melee weapons have weighted to make them feel like they're really big, and you can't just whiff them with like 1 damage. A buzzsaw also has mangle, which if you do damage to hit points, they start bleeding. Ranged weapons are the same, with a 9mm pistol having kickback, which halves the range if you only hold it with 1 hand. Or rifles having accurate, which makes it easier to make a targeted attack. A targeted attack is kind of like VATS, when you can choose specific body parts to hit to do additional effects to a target. You can also like target the item they're holding in their hands, so you could have a whole build where you just shoot guns out of people's hands. Pull out a gun. And shotguns have powerful. If you hit a creature within 5 feet with a shotgun, the attack is automatically a crit. There's also food, cooked food, produce, drinks, chems, and medicine, which also all follow this keyword system, which has been really fun to write and play with because almost every single item is different and unique in their own way. You can also craft like everything in the game, from guns to ammo to armor modifications to power armor modifications to food to drinks. Some drinks you can't because the formula has been lost, but I don't know, maybe you can craft beer. Maybe I spent an entire day figuring out how to make at-home beer and wine, and now you can make beer and wine if you really want to. It takes a long time and it is not worth it. I don't know who I wrote this for. After that, we've got all of the basic rules like movement, the environment, and combat, which is modeled very heavily off of the 5e SRD and is mostly just here for reference. But it's different. I've changed all of it. I've rewritten all of it. I've even got rules for terminal velocity and spreading fires. Oh, and of course, radiation. Basically, there are different areas in the world that have a radiation severity score, which determines how often you need to be making a radiation check. Your character has radiation DC based on different items they have or medicines that they can take, and every time you fail a radiation check, the DC becomes higher and higher. Whenever you gain a level of radiation, it does 1d12 damage to your hit points that you can't heal until you aren't in an irradiated zone anymore. For every level of radiation that you have a -1 to a d20 roll. And the same goes for exhaustion, starvation, and dehydration. Much easier to calculate that way. You can have some really bad d20 rolls. It's the whole thing with this system is your d20 rolls can just get really wacky. You can be thirsty and hungry and full of rads and your gun is broken, but you could have like a +10 to guns and it's like, still got a +5. AC is average like 10, so you're fine. Oh, and there's also a chance that if you die from radiation, you could potentially turn into a ghoul. There's also a whole section on targeted attacks, which I've brought up a few times already, but basically you can target different body parts like the arms or the legs or the torso or the head or the eyes and permanently blind somebody. originally I had a whole other document that had all of my GM notes that I used in it. And, well, I didn't really write a list of comprehensive rules for a GM. I made up a lot of stuff when I ran this game. I came up with a lot of it on the fly and improvised. And honestly, I kind of encourage GMs to do the same thing. This system is very loosey-goosey, and my advice to any DM who wants to run it is to rule it however you want. That's the entire reason why I made this system in the first place. Know that none of the rules in this game, whenever you're running it, are like, you have to stick to it. I wanted to do my own thing, so I think you should do the same thing too. This is also my excuse because writing a GM section is very difficult and would take a lot of time. And I am one person and I have wrote the foundation to this, and I am sorry I did not write a more comprehensive GM section. However, I have ported over a lot of the monster stat blocks that I did make and use, along with some GM tables that I did make. They are very sloppy and they're probably not even up to date or like complete, but if you want a place to start, you can use those notes and expand off of them if you'd like. I put a lot of work and love into this system. I'm very proud of it, and it's not perfect, and there's probably a lot of mistakes in here. I hope at the very least that if you decide to play this, that you have fun with it, or at the very least, this inspires you to write or create or do your own thing. To those of you who want to play this and are going to, I hope you have fun. I hope that it isn't too confusing and the gist comes across pretty easily. I am currently in the works of taking this system and making my own thing with it that isn't directly linked to Fallout. More on that soon. I wanted to talk about this first, and you know, maybe there's like some magic going on with it and it's going to be a lot bigger than this, and you know, you'll see. Just keep an eye out for that. It's going to be a lot of work, but I hope that I can make something that's worthwhile and professional and of course fun. Oh, thank you so much for watching this video.